Good morning, and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. We are located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, and I am here with you every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to provide landowners valuable information that you need, that landowners need, regarding the natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. So if you are looking for landowner information from a landowner perspective, then this is the show for you. At the Clark Law Firm, I focus solely on landowner representation, only landowner representation, and you're probably getting that theme there. I think that's very, very important. People may disagree, but from my perspective, I think that if you're going to be representing somebody, you're going to be representing your clients, that you need to pick a side. And in my case, I'm very comfortable with my side, and my side is dedicated solely to representing the landowner in Pennsylvania. And I have and continue to represent clients for gas lease negotiations, and I'm going to talk about gas leases today. It's going to be a big part of what today's show is going to be. And again, one of these things where whether you're under lease or considering a lease, I believe you're going to get some good value from today's show. As always, I continue to do extensive pipeline representation all across Pennsylvania. Same thing with gas leases and all representation. We have clients all across the western part of the state, as well as the northeastern, and of course the central part of the state as well. I'm doing more and more estate planning issues. We're doing a lot of work related to royalties, deduction issues. And I know I've said this before, please keep staying tuned because we're going to have some discussions and there's going to be some news. And I think you're going to want to make sure that you're paying attention in the upcoming weeks as we talk a lot more about royalty issues. Also, doing more and more gas lease amendments and modifications, consulting with people on top leases. When you have an offer of your lease is going to expire, and a lot of people at Tioga County know what I'm talking about here, where they're getting an offer to put a lease essentially on top of their lease, meaning that once their lease would terminate, then this new lease would take effect. However, these individuals are still under a current lease. So brief explanation on what I mean there. You have a landowner say that their lease expires on July 1st of 2015, and they're now getting an offer, and what we're seeing is from the same company in a lot of cases, but they're getting an offer to lease again. And the landowner says, well, geez, my lease doesn't expire until July 1st of next year. Well, what the company is really looking to do, and there's several factors, but they're looking to essentially extend that lease. Have you signed this top lease? So in the event that your original lease expires, and if they're in control of it, certainly they have control of whether it expires. Well, what's going to happen then is you'll be under this top lease, which would be the new lease that takes effect. And I've done some shows about that, and I'm going to throw in, I try not to make the show a commercial too much, but I will say, if you're a landowner in Tioga County and you have a lease offer, a top lease offer, maybe just even a lease offer, and typically this is from SWEPI or Shell, I would encourage you, give me a call. If nothing else, we can set up a consultation. Leasing today is so much different than what it was even last year, and certainly when we go back to 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's so different. And so what we have happening is people go online and they research, and if you listen, I'm very much into making sure that you're educated and informed as landowners. But the problem is we got to make sure that you're getting the good information that you need today, because that general information and information that was put out there, and a lot of it was put out there in this general leasing phase, where individuals may have multiple companies vying for their lease. So that information today, a lot of it not only doesn't apply, but if you do try to apply it, it can be very detrimental to you. So what's so important today, and so much of what I'm doing with a lot of what I'm doing with this lease work is, consulting with the client, explaining, what to expect. What have I seen in other areas that have played out similarly than this? What do I anticipate and I'm going to tell everybody I do not have a crystal ball, but what I anticipate or what I would expect, and a lot of it is really framing the issue for you, the landowner, to make sure that you understand, what should I be thinking about? What should I be evaluating? And a lot of times when I first talk to clients in this situation, they don't know, or they're thinking about the wrong things. So sometimes there's a light bulb moment where they say, well, geez, I'm really glad I wasn't thinking that way. A lot of times, too, you take common sense and a way a person thinks, and I say this all the time to people, let's take a step back. Let's, we all want to just eliminate common sense, but we need to put it to the side a little bit and talk about why this situation may not work out the way you believe it would. Quick example, you may say, well, what the heck is he talking about? Throw away common sense. Just a real quick example of what I mean. You say, well, hey, I have a 100-acre parcel, and they're getting gas next door from my parcel and all around me. And so the company is making a lot of money by extracting the gas. My lease expired, or I'm not under lease, whatever the case may be, but you're not under lease. Well, you say, well, geez, this company has an opportunity to make substantial royalties off of my property. I have 100 acres. I'm right in an area that's producing, and we know there's going to be gas there. And so when they drill, just using a simple number, if I get 15% of the royalties, they get 85%. So there's a potential, let's say they can make millions and millions and maybe tens of millions of dollars off the property in a good area. So you say, well, geez, I'm in a great position. This company is going to have to pay me good money. And instead of 15%, if that's what they're offering, I want 20% because I know people got that before. Or instead of $500 in some cases, instead of $1,000, I want $5,000. I want $6,000, whatever that number may be. Because he's looking, you say, listen, they can make a lot of money here, so it's only fair that I would receive, and it's only common sense that they would pay me a fairly high royalty, at least a royalty that matches what it used to be when there was good markets, because now we know that my property is even in an area that's very productive. So in fact, when the companies paid $5,000 and $6,000 in areas where they were speculating, well, now it's not even speculation. We know we can point to productive wells all around me as the landowner. We know they're going to hit something and this is going to be good. So what does common sense tell us? You're going to get a good lease. You're going to get a good lease because they are going to make a lot of money. They know it's there. This is an ideal situation. However, that's where you have to take common sense and put it to the side, because typically, in almost all cases, but typically what we have here is we have a situation where, okay, you have 100 acres, you're in a really good area, we know that, there's production all around you. Well, what happens? Typically, that production all around you is being done by one company, that there's a company who dominates an area, and they have all the leaseholds. So you sit there and you say, well, I have this 100 acres, this is going to be great. Let's open up the door and let's start taking offers. Well, what do you have? At the door, there's only one landman, and that landman works for, ultimately, or is attempting to secure leases for one company. The chances that you get multiple companies involved are very rare. So that competition aspect really comes into play. So companies don't like to say this to the landowner directly. But when you get to the right people inside of the company, they may say that to your attorney. And what do they say? What have I heard before? Well, it goes along this line. Yes, your client has 100 acres. Hey, yeah, we'd love to have it. We would love to have it. And yes, we can make a lot of money from this property. However, if we do not lease your client, if your client doesn't sign a lease with us, well, your client is going to get nothing. They're not going to get anything because we're just going to work around them. And you know, Doug, we have 300,000 acres in Pennsylvania to develop. This 100 acres is just a blip in our radar. Yeah, we could make a lot of money, but the reality is nobody cares that much from our side. So we're really going to bank. We're going to bank that your client is going to go ahead and sign a lease on the terms, on the terms that we present. Your client will give in and sign a lease on the terms that we present because ultimately they'll realize otherwise they get nothing. And then if they don't sign, if they still want to play this thing out, we will develop around them. Yeah, we'd like to have them. We'd like to have the opportunity. We would like to develop the property, but hey, we're willing to let it pass. So now this 100-acre landowner says, well, geez, scratching your head, that doesn't make any sense. And then what gets so unbelievably frustrating is sometimes the companies, and it depends on which company, and I'm not going to say today one of the companies is just really driving me crazy right now, but what happens is not only may a company say, hey, we're going to give you a $500 and 15% offer. Take it or leave it. That's all we're going to pay you. You don't want to take it? See you later. Okay, not only that, when neighbors may have signed at $5,000 and $6,000 and 20 and sometimes even 21% royalty, not only that, so they hand you this 500 and 15% lease, and you say, boy, this just seems so low. This is lower than what people were getting 6-7 years ago. However, okay, I recognize I'm really stuck because I don't have competition, and this is the only company that's going to lease to me. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to make the best of this situation. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. We're talking about gas leasing. We're talking about this situation that's arising, and I see it all the time. And what happens is landowner has some acreage that's no longer leased or it came out of lease, so it's free acres. They can lease to whoever they want. I'm using an example of a 100-acre lease. So the landowner, or 100-acre parcel. So the landowner gets this $500 and 15% offer and says, well, geez, that just doesn't make any sense. We know there's gas there. We know it's a productive area. There's wells producing all around me. Should I not have an offer that would be comparable to the offers that were high offers in the area at the time? Because now there's no speculation. You know the gas is there, company, and you know you're going to make a lot of money off of this property. So let's enter into a fair deal. Well, the company's definition of fair and yours maybe and usually are different. And what we have is the company's coming in and saying, hey, look, this is what we're going to give you. You don't like it? You don't like it? Don't take it. We can sit there and wait, or we can develop around you. So here's the landowner again. You have, say, for example, a $500 per acre offer, 15% royalty, and you say, geez, this just doesn't seem like a good offer. It just drives me crazy because this offer is so much lower than what my neighbors got, and now there's no speculation. The problem is there's no other company making you an offer. So it comes to the point where you say, after you study this, evaluate it, figure all this out, discuss it with somebody who understands what they're talking about, who can help and guide you, and you say, you know what, as much as it's killing me, I think I'm going to have to go ahead and do this. So what do I want to do now? Well, I want to protect my property as much as I can. I want to add some addendum terms. I want to have some control over any potential operations on my property. I want to make sure that I'm maximizing my royalty payments the way the calculation is going to occur. So let's start talking about the terms of the agreement. Well, the problem there is once again, these companies who everyone says, they all say we want to be buddies and we're all good friends and everything like that. The question is then, what are they willing to do? What are they willing to do to give you, a fair agreement? And my experience has been is some companies I have to applaud. And I'm going to say one company that I will applaud is Cabot. Cabot Oil and Gas. I get no benefit in the world. I fight them on a lot of different things. But I have a lot of respect for the way they're doing business with the leases because they're still working with the landowner. Still giving you a fair lease at the present time. So I have to say, kudos to Cabot, and I mean that. I really think it's a good thing of what they're doing out there in the community as far as with the leases. Now, there's other issues I have, have other issues with them, especially with regard to their operations and the agreements they present to people. But as far as leasing goes, I have to give them a lot of credit because they're maintaining high bonus, high royalty leases, and giving landowners a fair shake on the terms, even though they probably don't have to be truthful. Okay, this is Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. I'm going to be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, I'm located at 1563 in Main Street in Peckville. You can always contact me directly at 570-307-0702. It's 570-307-0702. I said here every Sunday from 8 to 9 on these stations. And remember, I've been doing the radio show since August of 2010. So what we do is we archive the radio shows up on the websites. We're putting them up on YouTube now as well. And for those who do regularly check, I apologize. It did come to my attention that we didn't have all these recent shows up. So we're going to get those up. We're working on getting them up. I've said this before, but I can tell you that I've actually seen some progress here. I've switched. I have a new web designer, and we have been working hard on revamping, and we're going to be releasing or going live, I think you call it, with our new websites, pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. We're going to be going, hopefully, by the end of the year. Supposed to be a little earlier, but I'm just gonna, I'm gonna stick with the end of the year as the target date. But check it out. Go to pagasleaseattorney.com. If you haven't, go to pipelineattorney.com. I'm gonna be adding all kinds of new content. I guess that's the technical word or technical term for words. I'm going to be adding to the website. It's going to have a whole new look. It's going to have a lot more information. So I'm pretty excited about it. Been working very hard on it, as has the team at the website design. So very much excited about this, and it should be up by the end of this year. But don't be afraid. Go check out, don't be afraid, okay? Don't be afraid. Go check out pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com now if you haven't, and then you can check out and see how we've changed it. So also, again, remember, we're going to have all these radio shows archived. I think there's at least 170 plus radio shows, so you can check them out. Also, friend us on Facebook. We're making a new little push here for some of this media stuff. We're going to also, I'm on Twitter and I tweet. I come across articles and clients send me articles. You can follow me at Doug Clark Law. And then here's another thing. I really welcome anybody. If you see an article or you hear something and you think it may be of interest to me, email it to me. Send it to me. I'll distribute it, or, I read everything. I'll read it and I'll distribute it if I think it's going to be something that's going to be helpful for landowners. One of the things that really helps me and us and what we do here is the landowner resources that we have. I can't read every single article in the country, but I do read what people send to me. So we have clients who are very active that are kind of scouring the internet or the news wires for different news and information. And so when they get something, they'll email it to me. I check it out and we'll put it out there to the public. Also, the other thing that happens is landowners will get letters from companies every once in a while. And just recently, Statoil sent these letters out to landowners, and we got probably 10, 15 people said, hey, look here, we got this letter. Chief recently sent out a letter to people. So those things too, we want to get the information out. So we're somewhat of a hub here of information. So please, bring it to us, bring it to me, and I will distribute it and put it out there to everybody. We want to make sure that we have the most level playing field that we can. And that's not something crazy to seek. That makes sense. And in that process, unfortunately, that's this whole kind of adversarial process here, where the idea is if everybody was just going to go ahead and do it right down the middle and cut a fair deal, well, then we wouldn't need to go through a lot of these struggles in this process. But what we have is the companies, and understandably, this is capitalism. the companies are going to do everything they can in almost all cases, and I just complimented Cabot in the last segment, but they're going to do what they can to really exploit the leverage that they have. And what's so funny to me and bizarre at the same time is when people, when a company has the leverage and they exploit it, they point to the lease or they point to the right-of-way agreement or they point to whatever contract it was, and they say, well, we have the rights under this lease. But when the landowner has rights or the ability to say no, then the company seems to try to give them the impression that they're bad people. And that's something that just drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy. A lot of people did what they could to get the best agreement. Some people were uninformed and they signed bad agreements. But now when a company wants to come back and do something different or something beyond what they're allowed to do, everybody, please know, you can say no thank you. Many people do. You can say no thank you. But it's important to make sure that you understand maybe it is something you want to do. Maybe you don't want to say no thank you. Maybe you want to talk about it. But how are you going to make that determination? Is it going to be based upon your discussions with the company landman, who is employed by, most cases, a broker who works for the gas operator or the pipeline company? Are they the ones that you should be getting this advice from? Or if you think you want to do something, should you go to a neutral party or not even neutral, somebody that's going to help you? And that's just so important. And remember, there are so many frustrated and angry landowners out there who entered into leases at $25, $50, $100, in some cases less, and some a little more. And we're told, oh, this will never go up, and this is never going to change, and this is too much money already, and all of these different things. Well, those were landmen who worked for gas companies. And then we see, what are we dealing with now? Landmen who work for gas companies. So you got to understand the playing field of where we are today, and we want to make sure that we make this as even as we possibly can. And I would just recommend that you do not take advice or guidance from the landman working for the gas or pipeline company. Just think about it and think about the history and think about how many people out there too have signed terrible pipeline agreements. So what we see here and what I deal with all the time, they still go out and they hand you a very poor agreement that can change drastically. Well, that's their job. Their job is to get you to sign the weakest possible agreement. And please, here's another thing, ladies and gentlemen. If the guy tells you or the girl tells you, oh, I'm real pro landowner, I'm all about the landowner, right there is the biggest red flag in the world. Because if they were all about the landowner, they wouldn't be there trying to get you to sign this agreement, which I'll guarantee you in 99+% of the time, you can do better. So when you hear that, it's just classic landman speak. I am Attorney Doug Clark. This is All Things Marcellus, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. Again, check out pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. All right, got fired up there a little on the landman, which I, as you know, sometimes do. But I want to go back to that example I was talking about in the first segment, where you got a guy, 100 acres, and all around him is producing, and for some reason either he didn't lease or his lease expired, whatever the case may be. And now he's sitting there and he has 100 acres in a great area, and he says, well, geez, I'm going to get a really good lease. I'm going to get a high price lease on a bonus. I'm going to get great royalty percent. Lo and behold, though, there's only one company making him an offer, and that company is offering him, in this example, $500 and 15%. So that's a difficult thing for the landowner. In common sense, he's thinking, hey, I can make millions of dollars on this, or the company's going to make millions, so they're going to give me maybe tens of millions, so I'm going to get a really good lease. They're going to be forced to do that because they got all this money sitting right in front of them. Well, the company says, maybe we can make this money. Look, you're right. We can make this money. However, you need us. And if you don't sign a lease, you're not going to get anything. Your neighbors are going to get royalties. People around you are going to get royalties, but you're not going to get any royalties. So, yeah, maybe we could make $10, $20 million off of your property. But you know how much money you're going to make, landowner, if you don't sign a lease? No dollars. And that, we're going to bet, is going to force you to go ahead and take the terms that we give you. Now, like I said, different companies treat these situations differently. And a lot of companies are very aggressive, and some companies are not as aggressive. And they're saying, you know what, we can still give this landowner a reasonable agreement. We can still do that. We can still work with them on location issues. We don't need to just jam this down their throat and say, take it or leave it in whatever terms we're given. We can work with you. And then, and look, and that's when they talk about, really, when they say, oh, we want to be good neighbors and those type of things, it's not hard to give a landowner some real basic terms, to give them some help and some protection that really is not going to hurt the company in the long run. Or if it does, the smallest amount, that's going to hurt them. But they're going to have to communicate. They're going to have to work with you. Or are they going to say, look, take it or leave it. We want the rights. We can put pipelines anywhere we want. We can put well pads anywhere we want. We're only going to pay you the damages. We're going to take deductions. Are they going to take that route? And some companies, unfortunately, are. So if you're sitting there, you say, okay, well, I'm going to take this. I'm going to negotiate on this $500 15% lease. I'm going to try to get the best terms possible. Well, you still fall back to that situation of, well, okay, company, there's no other parties around that are going to offer me a lease, and no other companies. So, hey, can we at least work out something that's going to help me? It's going to give me some input, because I am concerned about my property, and I'm concerned. I don't want it to be an industrial park, and I don't want to see a well pad or a roadway right in front of my house or in front of my cabin or whatever you have in the property. Well, some companies are going to be more willing to work with you than others, and to me, it's really sad that some companies are taking positions that they're just being very tough and not really giving the landowner very many terms. In a lot of cases, in some cases, not even giving them any terms. So those are things too, where it's important that you're talking to somebody that understands how this production is occurring, who's watching it unfold, who really knows how companies treat these scenarios, and in particular, how does the company you personally are dealing with, what is their history in these cases? How are they handling these cases? Also, looking at permitting information, really diving into secondary factors that a lot of people aren't thinking about. So we want to learn from the past. We want to learn from that particular company's activities in the past. And we also want to look at what have other companies done and what have we seen. And this whole analysis applies in so many different ways. I was doing some consultation with some landowners in Washington County, and one of the consultations was regarding an approval of an assignment where the company who had the lease wanted to assign to another company. So again, and in this case, they had to they had to have mutual consent on the assignment, but that landowner couldn't operate in an unreasonable fashion. Well, what's interesting here is that this could be a real simple answer. It could be a more complicated answer. But to get to the right answer, you need to understand, your lease. You need to understand the players. You need to understand what may happen if you don't agree, and what may happen or what will we anticipate if you do agree. And that's the thing. A lot of times people think they get these snap answers that, okay, well, this is my chance to get more money, or this is my chance to get a new lease. Whatever that case may be, you got to be careful. Not specific advice for anybody, but you have to be careful in this decision-making process, because what happens? What happens if your lease expires and you're like the gentleman I talked about earlier, the gentleman with 100 acres now that's unleased, surrounded by that same company, and now your lease expired, and maybe your original lease was at 18, 19, 20% royalty. But what if your new lease is only going to be 500 and 15%? What if your old lease had better deduction language to limit or stop the company from taking deductions. Your lease today is probably going to be very hard to get that. So you need to be looking at far more than the small picture. Let's look at the tree, but let's take a step back or several step back, and let's look at the forest. And let's figure out what's the best thing for you. And usually that can be done without a lot of time spent and cost involved. All right, I'm going to talk more about leasing. I'm going to get into some specifics. I'm going to explain, some of the things that are still going on and things you need to be looking at as a landowner. I am Attorney Doug Clark. This is All Things Marcellus, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m., and I'm going to be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to give landowners the information you need regarding Marcellus Shale and natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. Like I said, we're working on the websites, I promise, and we're getting places. I've been seeing where we have the mock-ups. I'm working on the content, going to be adding a lot of new information. Make sure you're checking pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com, whether you are looking for representation or looking for information. I think it's a very good resource for landowners, and really encourage you to check out pagasleaseattorney.com and pipelineattorney.com. The news sites, by all signs, should be up comfortably. I hate to say that. Should be up by the end of the year, and hopefully sooner than that. Also, what we're going to do too, and we're going to continue to do, we're going to be putting the radio show we do, and we're going to continue to put the radio show up on the websites. So if you go to pagasleaseattorney.com, you can listen to this week's radio show. And also, we're putting them on YouTube now, and we're doing that right away. We had a little gap there, and we got that figured out, and we got it taken care of. But we're getting those up there right away, so you can check out this week's show. We want it to be fresh information, because the whole market, these circumstances are changing all the time. So used to wait a few weeks before we put the show up, look, quite frankly, to encourage people to make sure you're tuning in, but said, look, I want to make sure this information gets out there. We don't want to make the show this big, giant commercial. Look, I represent clients, landowners all across the state. There's no veil here, or if there is, it's very thin, and we want to lift it and say, part of this is I want people to be educated. I want people to be informed, and as part of that process, what we find is people say, hey, hopefully they say this guy is somebody we're comfortable with, and you give me a call. I'd love to see if we can help you out, but that's your choice, and I'll continue to say it, whether it's me or somebody else. Please make sure that you're getting assistance when you're dealing with any of these contracts, any of these royalty issues that are more complex, any of these unitization issues, estate planning. Make sure you're looking at this and you're taking care of this and you're getting a plan in place. Make sure you're getting good advice, somebody with experience, somebody that has your best interest at heart and wants to make sure that they're taking care of you like you should be taken care of in this process. You're the client. You should be taken care of. So make sure that you're getting some help. Again, whether it's me or somebody else, please make sure you're getting that assistance, because landowners need it. I talked about that playing field. The playing field is not even. And the best we can do, the best I can do, is seek to even that field. And rarely, sometimes we can maybe get ourselves a little greater than even advantage. But that's what we want to do. We need to make sure, though, that landowners are informed. And I know, I'm a do-it-yourselfer in a lot of ways. Research things and become educated, and things that I feel comfortable that I can do on my own and not necessarily need to hire somebody to do. But please understand that there are times still where no matter how much you read, no matter how much you talk to people, some of these issues that people are facing, and a lot of them, are so nuanced that there is information that you're just not going to be able to get from other people. There's evaluation. When I say other people, I'm talking about other landowners, certainly not the land guys. You need to be looking at this sometimes in ways which you don't even know exist, meaning that you're not aware. So many times with these lease offers, they say to people, we want to be careful about your lease maybe expiring because that could be the worst thing in the world. And that's a simple example, very simple example. But a lot of people are making bad decisions because they're not informed and they're looking at it the wrong way, and they would look at it a different way, but they don't even know what that way is. They haven't even seen that, or they haven't thought about it. So you need to be kind of getting more input, opening up your mind, getting a better understanding of what you should be thinking about. Now, on the flip side, the exact opposite is, I talked about maybe not wanting your lease to expire, which is very, very true in a lot of cases. However, there's a whole bunch of other cases on the exact opposite side where you want your lease to expire. You want it to expire, and there's reasons for that. But you have to know which side of the fence that you are on, because, and I promise you I've seen it many times, and people have came to me when they were on the fence trying to figure out what they wanted to do, or didn't even know they had a choice to maybe step on the other side of the fence. But you have to understand what your circumstances are. You have to know, is it good for my lease to expire, or is it bad? The best that we can tell. And sometimes there's no guaranteed answers. Sometimes it's about framing those issues for the landowner and for the client and say, look, here's what you need to be thinking about. And I'm a big, in my life and my thought process, I'm very big on weighing things, where I say we need to weigh all these different factors. And what happens is anytime that you're weighing different factors, they have different weight that you're going to attribute to them. And some people may be very adverse to taking risk. Other people may say, you know what, I'm willing to take a gamble. That's just my personality. Some people may be older and on the verge of retirement and maybe want to take a more conservative approach. So when they're weighing factors that involve risk are going to weigh heavier than some other factors. Some people very much are concerned about potential operations on their property. So they're going to have a certain position. So if we have a lease that says, or a lease offer that says essentially the company can operate anywhere, well, that person, they don't weigh that as heavily in the negative category than the person who's living on the property that says this has been in my property has been in my family for generations. And the last thing that I want is for the company to go ahead and come on my property. Or if they're going to come on the property, I really need to have some input and some discussions as to where they're going to operate and how can we limit this. These are things that different people are going to weigh differently. Also, part of that process is, and I'm using real simple examples, but sometimes you have to understand there may be factors that you're not even considering. So you're not able to weigh these factors. You're not even able to give them a certain amount of scrutiny or care and see how much do these things weigh to you. I keep envisioning here as I'm talking to some big giant scale where you say, okay, this is bad, and something may be a small point, but it'd be a very important point to you. So that may be something that tilts the scale entirely a different direction, where a guy on the other side may not care about that at all. So you really have to understand all the different items and all the different things you should be weighing, which you should be considering, but then sometimes there are factors that you don't even know about. And so a good lawyer or somebody that's going to help you is going to point out all of those things and frame those issues and assist when he or she can. But most importantly, and from my perspective, is to get that good information to you, to tell you what factors you should be considering, to give you personal experiences, what I've seen in the past, possibly to talk about what may occur in the future, but understanding nobody can tell you that. Not me or anyone else. So that's a really important part of this process, is that you as the landowner get somebody who you trust, who can assist you, who knows what you should be thinking about, explaining what you may expect in the future. To have clients who have well sites, to have clients who have pipelines, to see what type of problems these people have had or not had, that everything went smoothly. So you're really considering all of these different options, or these different factors, in making your decision. I am Attorney Doug Clark. This is All Things Marcellus, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. We're talking about leasing here today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about something that I've seen recently, and want to stress to people, obviously shifting gears here a bit, want to stress to people that I'm doing a lot more leasing today than I have in the recent past. Getting a lot of calls and representing people in Tioga County with Shell, calls in Washington County, many people in Susquehanna, some Bradford, some Wyoming, some Lycoming. So a lot of active lease files, and it's interesting because you go and maybe I don't get a lot of calls for leasing because there's not much going on, and then all of a sudden, either leases in an area the company wasn't able to get to develop, and they start expiring, and companies now are approaching them for new leases. Then we have the Tioga situation, which appears to just being flooded by Shell and Sweppy, same company, essentially affiliated, offering all these landowners leases, and offering landowners kind of three categories. Either you never leased at all, or you did lease and you expired, or you have a top lease, meaning you're under lease right now, and Shell comes out and offers you a top lease. You need to understand what's going on there. So if you have that situation, I'm just going to put this out there. Commercial alert. You're in Tioga County. You're considering this. Wondering what in the world's going on. You can always contact me, 570-307-0702, and we'll talk about it and give you some, we can do a consultation if you're interested. Give you the framework of what you should be thinking about and how best to handle this situation. I ran a little long on my first two segments, so I'm going to come back. I'm going to talk about in this last segment. I'm going to make it a little bit longer because I want to get through this. What's going on? People are getting leases, and there's things you need to watch out for. And I'm not going to go too deep right now into post-production costs, but those post-production costs, or what's commonly called deductions, are an enormous issue to landowners. So what we see in these leases is new lease offers. Very tricky language, everyone. Very tricky language. You need to understand, what does this mean? And quite frankly, a lot of the language, nobody can tell you what it means. I can't tell you how it's going to ultimately be interpreted. But what I can tell you is, where are the problems with this language? What are possible interpretations that we might see moving forward? When a landman gives you what they call no deduction lease, or they say this is going to be a gross lease or a net lease, this is going to be a no deduction lease, you're not going to have any costs, you're going to have pro rata costs, any of those things, you need to understand what does that mean. And I'm telling you that there are landmen all over Pennsylvania giving landowners leases today, and continue to give leases saying, oh, this is a no deduction lease. No deduction lease. However, that is not necessarily true. So this isn't the topic here today, but I want to make sure you understand. If you're handed a lease and you're told that's a no deduction lease, and sometimes it even says it, the heading is royalties without deductions or no deductions, I am telling you that does not necessarily mean that that's true. That's how it's going to be interpreted. So if you have that, you need to understand that may not be accurate, and in some cases, it's certainly not going to be. All right, I am Attorney Doug Clark. I'll be right back after this break. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I am here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m., and I'm going to be back for one more segment after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Again, you can always contact me directly at 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. Check out pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. Whether you're looking for representation or information, check out the websites. Okay, trying to get through this. The point of this whole segment is, if you are currently considering a lease, you need to be careful. You need to understand that what's being presented to you may not be exactly what's being said to you. What do I mean? I mean, landman may say to you, this lease means that you will be paid royalties without deductions for post-production costs for such items as gathering, transportation, and compression, for example. Him or her saying that to you does not make it true. The landman telling you that you have a no deduction lease offer does not make it true. I personally have had many times landmen tell me this is not going to be a deduction lease. There won't be any deductions taken, when I know full well that deductions are being taken under this exact same language, and in cases by the company that's seeking to obtain the lease. So you need to understand that. Also, understand that your lease language, maybe that company today isn't taking deductions with the language they're offering you. Maybe that's true. But also today, many companies or several companies are taking deductions with that same language. Landowners out there know what happens. Well, you may lease to one company and you may see your lease change hands once, twice, 3, 4, sometimes more. So if you lease to a company with language in the addendum that says they're not going to take deductions, and that's what you believe it means, and that's what you're told it means, and if that company isn't not taking deductions under that language, what happens if they sell or assign your lease to another company who does take deductions? Well, what do? Do you say, hey, new company, the landman told me this would be no deductions? Well, you can certainly try, but that's not going to get you very far. You need to understand also that not only could this company sell your lease to another company, the one who is leasing you now and is not taking deductions because you have either the market enhancement clause or what's called the ready for sale or use clause, meaning you have an addendum term which you believe means no deductions. And in fact, the company that's offering you the lease that has that clause is not currently taking deductions from landowners' royalties if you have that clause in your lease. So that sounds good, but again, if that company who doesn't take deductions sells their assets, what if they sell all these leases? Sells them to another company or assigns them to another company, and that company treats it differently, well, now you got a big problem. Also, a lot of companies, as many of the landowners know and many of our clients know, you may lease to one company. Let's say you lease to Shell. So if you lease to Shell, well, Shell may decide, Shell would now own 100% of your lease. They're the only company you lease to, so they own 100%. Well, they may decide, hey, we want to get some money to acquire more leases in another part of the company. We want to build or get some more capital so we can get some more cash so we can acquire more leases. Well, how do we do that? Well, one way to do that would be to sell or assign a portion of their lease. I mean, they may sell all of these leases, or they could assign or sell a portion of the lease. So maybe they say, all right, we're going to give 50% of this lease, not give. We're going to sign or sell 50% of our lease to Ultra, another company. And perhaps Ultra may treat your lease language different. So you could be in a position where you leased to, in this example, and remember this is an example only, you lease to Shell. Shell doesn't sell all of your lease to somebody else, but they sell 50% to Ultra Petroleum. Again, this is just an example. And hypothetically, we'll say Ultra takes deductions, but Shell doesn't. So now you still have the same lease, but you have two companies treating it differently. Well, what if Shell then sells another 25% of the lease to another company? Maybe they take deductions. So now, maybe Shell doesn't ever take deductions, but now they only own 25% of your lease, and the other companies are taking deductions. Very interesting situation. So when that landman tells you, well, this is a no deduction lease, I'm telling you there's no way at the present time that landman can accurately make that statement. I can't see how at the present time anyone can make that statement, because we didn't even get to the last part of this process where, what if the company who you lease with, who gives you this royalty language that says, hey, this is a no deduction lease, what if they decide that they're going to change their position? What if they say, you know what, in light of new Pennsylvania law, or in light of additional review of Pennsylvania law, in light of what we're seeing other companies do, you know what, we think actually we are allowed to take deductions, so we're going to start. And we're going to start taking deductions. And maybe even they go back retroactively from the beginning of time and say, you know what, we're going to recoup. We didn't take deductions, but you know what, we could have. So we're going to go back, and all of those deductions that we could have taken but didn't take, we're going to go ahead and recoup that money. So we're not going to go into your pocket and take it out right now. But what we're going to do is, instead of paying you your monthly royalty check, we're going to go ahead and just pay ourselves with that until you get caught up. So if, for example, you owed us $10,000 in deductions where we believe we could have taken these deductions, but we didn't, we paid you, and that total amount of payment was $10,000, well, we're going to wait now, and we're going to withhold your royalties until you make up that amount. So once you get past $10,000 of royalties owed and we recoup that money, then we'll start paying you again. I want to stress again, this is a hypothetical, something that I absolutely do believe may occur. I'm not saying with these particular companies, I'm just using companies as examples. So I don't want to give that impression that any of this is specific to either Shell or Ultra. I'm just giving these examples of things which, you know, can possibly occur, not just with these companies, could occur with any company. So just want to make sure everyone takes it in the right light. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. And, you know, this is a big, big issue. And it's not just happening in one area. It's happening all over the place. You know, it's happening in Susquehanna County. It's happening in Bradford County. I know it's happening in Wyoming County. It's certainly happening in Tioga County. There's many places where landowners believe they're getting something. They're being sold a lease with an understanding of one thing, and the truth is that it may not actually turn out to be that way. Now, what's the answer? Okay, you know, you're so smart. What's the answer? Well, in most cases, there isn't an answer. In most cases, the situation is, well, we're not going to be able to change this. This is how it's going to be. But when you're doing your evaluation process, remember earlier I talked about weighing different factors. Well, one of the things you're going to have to weigh is, all right, I'm getting this lease offer, but I know that even though I'm being told that I'm not going to have any deductions taken, I understand that that may not be true. And I understand that if I enter into this lease, as of today, this company isn't taking deductions with this language, but I recognize that that lease could be assigned or sold in total or in part to another company who may treat it differently. I understand that the company that I'm leasing with may keep my lease, and although not taking deductions today, may change positions and take deductions in the future. I know that if they do that or another company does, I may end up being involved in some type of lawsuit, perhaps a class action, whatever that case may be, to try to get money which I believe that I'm owed. I understand all of these things. So what would I like to do? I'd like to have some better language. I'd like to be able to draft some language which would guarantee me, as much as possible, no deductions. But, as my lawyer has told me, we can do this, but the company's not going to accept it. The company wants this language. So I'm going to look at all of these factors and say, well, I don't have any other alternatives. I don't like this. There's a lot of problems here, but you may conclude at the end of the day, after weighing all these things, that still this is the best option for you. And that's what you need, that information. I am Attorney Doug Clark. This is All Things Marcellus. I am signing off. I will be here next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everyone.